Hi there, this is Carl Irwin with a quick look at the Jack branch of MuseScore 4. This is a pull request that enables Jack audio server transport. I'm doing this via Pipewire. My system is Ubuntu Studio 24.04. This is a relatively recent installation from the point release, the first point release of that distribution. All of the systems that I'm using utilize that except for one, and on that one it is an upgrade from two long-term service distributions back, and that one doesn't do what we're going to look at here. It has some problems. I'm assuming probably because of that upgrade track rather than it being a fresh installation with everything installed the way it's supposed to be, including Pipewire. So that's the operating system environment. I also have the KX Studio repository installed on this system, but I do not believe that it actually affects anything that we're dealing with here with respect to Pipewire or Ardour. If we look at the package that I'm running, it's Ardour 8.4. It's not coming from that repository. This is just the Ubuntu Studio default version. So if you're running an upstream version of this, you may get different results, or if you're running from a different repository, you may get different results. This is the default one that comes with the operating system. For the version of MuseScore, I am running, and this is the most important part of this quick discussion, this is 4.4.0.241121.641. This is the build number, 241121.641. This is the last working the last working build that I have from this pull request. All builds after this one have some issues. Most of them suffer at least one issue that is the same across the board, and that is that you cannot seek from Ardour, and you may have playback transport problems from Ardour, but it will play from MuseScore, from the MuseScore side of it. But the seeking does some really wacky things. It throws the playhead in very strange directions, thousands of measures off. So this build, however, does everything as expected, and it's the last one to do so. It's running on a base based on 4.40, and it was an early build of that, so there's some bugs that are in the base of it that are somewhat problematic when you go to write. They're not major problems, but just a couple quirky things that were not resolved at that time. The current base for the pull request is 4.5, but as I said, since going to that base, there have been problems with those builds, so I'm not using that for any work at this time. This is the build that I'm using. I did link this back to the pull request comment section recently, and I'll leave it up for a little bit while longer. If you see this video, you can go grab that, at least from me, if you can't search for it and find it on the on GitHub. I'm not sure if it is available or not, how you have to seek that out. So those are versions. That's what we're looking at. When you open up MuseScore, this pull request, you will need to go to Preferences just to make sure that everything is connected properly. In this build, the tab is called Playback, and subsequent ones, I believe it's called Audio. You want to make sure that the audio device is Jack. The sample rate is 48,000 because you're on Ubuntu Studio 24.4, and it is running Pipewire. It is running Pipewire by default at 48,000. Okay, so you want to make sure it's the right sample rate. Otherwise, it will play in a weird pitch. Current builds of MuseScore 4 have issues with the sample rate I'm finding on Linux. It will work, but then at least when I use it, it fails from time to time. Other people are not reporting that issue, but you do want to make sure your sample rate is correct on the current builds of just regular trunk, master trunk MuseScore 4, that you're setting it to the right sample rate. Otherwise, you'll find very quickly it does not play properly. There's all kinds of problems. MIDI output should be Jack down here. Okay, so those are the settings. On Ardour side, you go over here to the left, right underneath the transport, there's a button that says INT period. This is for the synchronization, transport synchronization capability. It's to enable it or disable it. I want to right button click right mouse button click on that. It'll bring up the properties for the transport masters. You want to make sure that jack is selected. Okay, so select jack, make sure that that one is selected, and then you can enable it. So now everything is connected to jack. Last thing real quick, make sure that your MuseScore is connected to the audio out. Open up a session manager. I'm using Pat Chance here. You could use Carla. And I can see here's my MuseScore. I want to drag this over and make sure that's going into the output. Now, just a quick aside, you could also bring MuseScore into Ardour. You could bring it into the master or make a bus. You can pipe the audio directly in real time into Ardour if you want to. That is a possibility with respect to mixing. And also, if you have multiple sessions of MuseScore open, let's say you have a piece, it's a full symphony orchestra. If you have multiple sessions of that piece with with everything muted but specific sections, let's say one session has the brass playing but everything else is muted. Another one has or rather soloed or whatever, however you want to configure it. But one has the brass playing, another one has the woodwinds playing, another one has the strings playing, and so on. You could pipe those multiple instances into Ardour into different buses with effects. Aha! So you could actually do this in live and apply outboard effects via Ardour in real time, something to play with, or through Carla. You could do the same thing in Carla, have multiple sessions or multiple inputs and whatnot, and route it in that way. So a lot of interesting, fun things you can do in that respect. The good news is that if you're doing it through Ardour, and when you go to bounce down and you hit play and record, it will be in synchronization. So that's the benefit there rather than going through Carla. You actually have transport synchronization when using this. I use this for film score. One last thing on film score. If you're going to be using the video capability on Ardour, you need to make sure that you download the latest XJadio video player app image. Go to the XJadio project's website, download the current app image, put it on your system, in your home folder or whatever, and then make sure that in Ardour that you are pointing to it. So if I go down here to, let me find it, video, you want to make sure that you have Ardour pointing to that app image. The default installation of XJadio, I found, at least on previous versions of Ubuntu Studio, does not handle video playback when jack is enabled properly. So the vanilla installation of XJadio doesn't work, but the current iteration app image does work flawlessly. So make sure you do that if you're going to be doing film score work from Ardour synced to MuseScore 4. Anyway, that is our setup. We have this enabled, and now we'll see that, if I disable my metronome here, when I hit play from the play transport on MuseScore, we are in sync. We're relatively in sync. You can see that things are playing properly. If I stop, it will stop. I can seek ahead to a forward measure, and you can see it moves the playhead to that forward measure, and I can hit play. Now, not only does it work here, but it also works from Ardour. I can even seek from Ardour back to measure 5, and when I hit play from MuseScore, it will start playing at measure 5. Okay. Likewise, I can seek back to measure 4 from Ardour and play from Ardour, and it will start the playhead in those respective locations. Now, the one issue you will find out with this setup is that the play engine on MuseScore to this point has a slight delay, but it's a static delay, and because it's a static delay, it can be compensated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to measure 1 of my MuseScore project, and this would be a buffer measure, an extra measure at the beginning before your project material actually starts. And I'm going to add a tempo. And I'm going to add a tempo of 120. And then over here on the Ardour project, you'll see there is a default tempo of 120. I want to make sure that that's in there. So both of these are starting at 120. Now what I want to do is I want to alter this in such a way that by measure 2, we're in synchronization. So I'm going to change this. I find that the number, depending on your system, it's anywhere between 123 and 125. So I'm just going to put 124 on here for now. And then on measure 2, I'm going to put the actual tempo for the project. So let's say the project is going to be 80 beats per minute. What I'm going to do now is go down to Ardour, and then on measure 2 in Ardour, I'm going to create a new tempo marking. So I'll right button click, add new tempo, and this one is going to be 80 beats per minute. And I hit apply. And just, I see something funky here. I want to make sure I edit this one, that this one is 120. And it is. Okay, so we have 120 for the first measure, 80 for measure 2. 124 for the first measure, 80 for measure 2. So now when I start here out at, say, measure 2, at the start of my project, and I could have my project aligned up to this point, and I'll enable my metronomes on both of these so you can hear the clicking. If I hit play, you can hear that we have relative sync, right? And this happens no matter where I start. If I start out down here at measure 7 from Ardour, and I hit play from Ardour, we have relatively good sync. Okay. Now listen to how you can hear the actual adjustment happening. If I go all the way back to measure 1 and I hit play, I'll hit play from the MuseScore transport at this point. You can see what that offset measure does. The offset allows the play engine to catch up over the first 4 beats, and then it arrives here. So if you were using Blender, rather than thinking about measures, you would offset your start time by the number of frames per second, 2 seconds worth. So let's say it's 60 frames per second. You've got some kind of 4K HD video and it's 60 frames. You would start it at 120. Okay, you would count that number of frames out. And then you would adjust for the frame rate for whatever you're using. So if you're doing 24 frames, remember that 24 frames represents 1 second. And then you would go 2 seconds out from there. So 48 frames would be the beginning point of your project. And you can actually set the starting point in Blender, and because they're all linked in transport, you can never actually go back to that first measure. You'll always be at the static start time every time you go to the beginning of the playhead from any one of the applications. So that is how you can do the offset for synchronization. And this is how I've been doing film score. I've done about half a dozen film scores now on short films using this project for clients, other people outside of myself. And it has worked fine for them. They don't sense that there's anything strange about the timing. It is frame accurate scoring to picture. So that's where I'm at, and that's what it can do. And I'm finding that this works on all of my systems where Ubuntu Studio is a new install, not an upgrade, but a new install from disk after the point 1 release. That's what I'm getting. And before that, this was working fine too. I'm just saying that that's the comparison specs that I'm looking at right now. I was using this on Ubuntu Studio 22, I believe, 0.4 was the last one, distribution I was using, and this was working on that as well. Anyway, hopefully that helps you in terms of the setup and what you need and the specifications. If you're finding that you have the exact same specifications as me and things still are not working, I'm at a loss for what to suggest or recommend other than to say that there's something not playing nice on your hardware. You probably have a hardware issue, or you have a software situation, maybe with your operating system, that you're in an upgrade environment and something about the upgrade rather than the fresh install is playing games with your system, probably on the pipe wire jack emulation end. So anyway, that's what I've got for you. Good luck with that. Happy composing and happy mixing.